do realize that all those girls were basically tortured to perform on stage, right? K-pop is a vile industry. If you're a K-pop fan, you know these criticisms. You've heard them a million times before. You tell someone that you like K-pop, chances are you've heard something like this told straight to your face. There's a shared sentiment among these comments: exploitation, abuse, slavery, etc., etc. And that's the predominant narrative about K-pop to the public, this dark side of K-pop narrative. There is some truth to them. Yes, the examples that they use are real. But there's just something off-putting about these narratives if you're a K-pop fan. It's not just the fact that the dark side gets brought up every time K-pop is even so much as mentioned, but it's about how facts and true stories get woven together with internet sensationalism. So let's talk about it, about K-pop's public perception and the need for nuance. The year is 2011, and the music, well, most people are busy listening to party rock. But halfway across the world, there's another music genre that's starting to infiltrate the Western public consciousness: K-pop. And with the introduction of K-pop to the West, so too comes the introduction of the dark side of K-pop. Like this article from the BBC published, when else? In 2011. And since then, this dark side has, by and large, been the perception of K-pop by the general public. When people talk about the dark side of K-pop, there's themes and examples that consistently reappear. Slave contracts, strict diets, overwork to the point of collapse. And yes, you can find examples of all of these online. And these are all genuine, real-life situations that happened in K-pop. Okay, well, if the examples in these videos are real, then what's the problem here? So the dark side of K-pop is real then? I'll see to you that these examples, that what these narratives have included, are indeed real. But the issue here is what these dark side narratives are missing. And there are two main things here. Let's take a look at who's writing about the dark side of K-pop. They're journalists, they're YouTubers, but for the most part, they're not K-pop fans, or pop music enthusiasts for that matter, or really anybody with music industry knowledge. So what aspects of K-pop are similar to Hollywood, and which parts are a wholly Korean invention? Dark side narratives oftentimes only spotlight the K-pop side of things. Let's walk through an example together. If you're making a dark side K-pop video, then you have to mention K-pop's training debt.
Money that they do actually get to keep is immediately used to pay off their massive training school debts.
A huge chunk of it goes straight to management to pay the debt they're owed.
K-pop idol next has to pay off all their trainee debt. Think student debt, only worse.
It is like a requirement for these videos. But these videos never actually get to the heart of what's actually wrong here, beyond just, locking people in debt for years is bad. So let me explain. A typical K-pop contract lasts for 7 years, where the artist will sign an exclusive deal with one company that then oversees all aspects of their career. So artist development, A&R, marketing, PR, and then they take a cut of any revenue stream that the artist has. Think merch, touring, album sales, celebrity endorsements, you name it, they take a cut. So because the company is paying upfront for all of these costs, it's typical for the K-pop artist to owe their company back, and that is called the artist debt. You typically do not make money as a K-pop artist until you break even and that debt is cleared. So what's the deal with the K-pop contract then? Well, the K-pop contract actually isn't all that unique if you compare it to the 360 deal that we see in the Western music industry. A 360 deal is an exclusive contract with the artist, where the record label takes a cut of almost all revenue streams the artist has, so not just music. Think merch, touring, album sales. This is very similar to the standard K-pop contract. What's the difference then? Well, in K-pop, you don't get paid until after the break-even point. Whereas in the Western music industry, you get paid before that break-even point. That's called an advance. And this is not free money. You still have to pay it back. How are you going to pay it back? Through your earnings as an artist. So it's not the debt that's the problem. It's when you get paid that's the problem. As a K-pop artist, what counts towards your debt is entirely in the hands of your company. So yes, you can expect costs like your music video to be billed to you. But the company controls all of your payments, and that also means they control what counts towards your debt. So it means the company can bill you for stuff that you don't want to be billed for. Like how Daisy and Momoland had to tell her company to stop billing her for lawsuits that her company filed that she did not want. So what ends up happening is that you end up with more and more debt over costs that you have no say over. And that's the dark side with K-pop trainee debt. Not the fact that it exists, because that's not special, but how it's paid back. So without this comparison to the Western music industry, these narratives aren't giving their viewers or readers the right context to understand what makes K-pop actually different. Yes, K-pop contracts are structured in a way that greatly favors the company over the artist. But 360 deals are also similarly controversial in the Western music industry. In these dark side of K-pop narratives, I never hear any mention of comparisons to the Western music industry in general. And there are far, far more comparisons that can be made than just trainee contracts. Think the analogies between artist development and the K-pop trainee system, or the excessive scrutiny on women's bodies. So the parts of K-pop that actually deserve the spotlight are aspects that either have no parallel or elements that other industries have abandoned. And that's the real dark side. The second aspect here is culture. Let me start by saying something extremely obvious here. K-pop is a product of Korean culture. The K-pop industry, the way that it's formed and the way that it's run, is rooted heavily in Korean cultural values and norms. But these dark side narratives aren't always written by people who have firsthand experience with Korean culture. They're written by outsiders trying to understand something foreign to them by trying to shoehorn it into their own cultural background. What many of these dark side narratives lack is the appropriate cultural context to understand how K-pop came to be this way. The horror stories of K-pop didn't develop in a vacuum. They reflect the culture in which it was built. So, I'm not Korean myself, and so I do not claim any expertise here. But I do think that a deep dive into Korean societal values, like beauty standards or a culture of competition, would help place K-pop's current structure in the right context. Certainly, they would go a long way in explaining why plastic surgery is so prevalent in K-pop and why the training system is so grueling. The reflections and extensions of a culture different from the West. When we're dealing with something foreign, we need to contextualize it within the culture it arose, not the one that we're familiar with. So the questions we should be asking aren't, what's wrong with this industry? But rather, given the cultural context here, what is still wrong with this industry? Interestingly enough, these narratives rarely ever focus on the white-collar crime of K-pop, only the salacious little bits like diets and slave contracts, because honestly, that's what gets clicks. Think about it. Would you rather click on this headline about suicide and spy cams, or would you rather read about some tax fraud? I know what I'm clicking on, and it's not about Yi Soo-man being implicated in the Panama Papers. In the end, many dark side narratives are narratives created by people who aren't K-pop fans for viewers who also aren't K-pop fans. When your audience isn't super knowledgeable about this topic, you likely aren't either. These narratives have just enough truth for an uninformed viewer. It's an easy way to shock and appall people, to confirm an audience's pre-existing beliefs about K-pop. When K-pop came to prominence in the West in the late 2000s, early 2010s, social media was pivotal to its international growth. In tandem, it wasn't just K-pop music videos that spread on social media, but also most of the information about K-pop itself. And sensational headlines about K-pop's dark side received a significant amount of attention. And that has been instrumental in shaping the public's view of K-pop. Dark side of K-pop narratives aren't usually outright falsehoods, but they're divorced from the cultural context it arose, and written about by people who don't have the industry knowledge to be able to make proper comparisons. It's a flattened portrayal of the industry, presented without the depth to make it well-rounded, with just enough spice and scandal to make you click. What we need then is dark side narratives that are able to explore and educate on the industry's flaws, but from voices who are able to properly put it into context. Not people who knew nothing about it before, not people who are going to defend the industry no matter what, so no fans and no one who works in the industry. A good narrative about K-pop's flaws explores change over time and context. How does K-pop reflect the values of Korean society? How does this differ from the Western lens we typically view it from? And given this context, what parts of the industry do you still believe need change? The true benefit of an enhanced narrative like this is that it benefits both fans and non-fans. It's a learning opportunity for K-pop fans who have an overly glamorized view of the industry, and for non-fans who only know K-pop as an exotic oddity. As K-pop continues to grow, especially as it seeks to expand worldwide, these are the voices and the narratives we need in order to understand where this industry needs scrutiny the most. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing to my channel. It really helps a lot. Thank you to Rebe Orbit for helping me on this video. Until next time,